A reading from the first book of Kings. In those days, Elijah the prophet went to Zarephath. As he arrived at the entrance of the city, a widow was gathering sticks there. He called out to her, "Please bring me a small cup full of water to drink." She left to get it, and he called out after her, "Please bring me along a bit of bread." She answered, "As the Lord your God lives, I have nothing baked. There is only a handful of flour in my jar and a little oil in my jug. Just now, I was collecting a couple of sticks to go in and prepare something for myself and my son. When we have eaten it, we shall die." Elijah said to her, "Do not be afraid. Go and do as you propose. But first, make me a little cake and bring it to me. Then you can prepare something for yourself and your son. For the Lord, the God of Israel, says, 'The jar of flour shall not go empty, nor the jug of oil run dry, until the day when the Lord sends rain upon the earth.'" She left and did as Elijah had said. She was able to eat for a year, and he and her son as well. The jar of flour did not go empty, nor the jug of oil run dry, as the Lord had foretold through Elijah. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
I really don't have to worry about whether we're going to have enough flour in our house or not. I can go into the kitchen with the expectation of baking cookies or bread, and I am confident that there will be flour in the jar. And if we're ever running low, I know that Terry will order more, and it will be here in 2 days. It is easier to trust God, that God will provide, when we recognize patterns and know general outcomes. But it isn't the same when we don't know the implications. As we live together in our Dominican life, more responsibilities are given to each of us. More is asked of us. Students take leadership roles within the house to help our community life function well. The brothers in full-time ministry are asked to be pastors or president of an institution. We are asked first to do one small thing: get me a cup of water. And before we are done doing that, we're asked to do one more: please bring me a bit of bread. These demands can be overwhelming and appear to have no ending. But we can learn from the widow to trust. We can learn from her to be generous when we're asked to give of ourselves for others, to let ourselves be instruments of the ministry of the word. We may have doubts whether there will be flour in the jar or not, but this widow teaches us through her trust in God's providence that God indeed provides. This widow teaches us not to hold back, even when there is a drought and resources are so scarce that it seems like all we can do is to make one little bread, to eat it and then die. It is at those low moments in our life when we must truly give our whole selves without holding back. Us as students are being formed as preaching friars, as future priests and ministers of the sacraments, but also as brothers who will be asked to take on larger responsibilities in our priories and in our ministries. We don't know what those responsibilities will entail, but if we are predisposed to let the Spirit of God work in each of us, we can trust that God will give us exactly what we need. That doesn't mean there will be no suffering or pain. If we keep reading from the first book of Kings, we will see that in the very next verse, the widow's son got very sick and died. If you keep reading a few more verses, Elijah intercedes to God for the life of the widow's son, and he comes back to life. Every moment that we go through, whether pleasant or difficult, is an opportunity for us to know God more if we're predisposed, if we trust Him always. When her son returned to life, she said to Elijah, "Now indeed I know that you are a man of God, and it is truly the word of the Lord that you speak." Elijah had already prophesied and fulfilled that her jar of flour would not go empty or the jug of oil run dry. Still, she had doubts. But those doubts didn't keep her from asking for God's help. Her trust in God was greater than her doubts. When we predispose ourselves to God's grace and His goodness, He gives freely. And when He gives abundantly. He satisfies the desire of every living thing. Back to our kitchen. When I go to the kitchen with the intention of baking, I know that we have all-purpose flour and we also have bread flour. I can bake cookies with the first or bread with the other. But we also have rye flour and buckwheat flour. We also have seeds of many kinds. When I mix these, we get a delicious loaf of birdseed bread, my favorite. And I don't have to worry if we will have what I need to bake bread. Again, when God gives, He gives abundantly. And it takes of us to trust that He will provide through our benefactors and through our common life in this very particular example. And as we continue to reflect on this story of Elijah, the widow and her son, let us reflect on those times when it has been difficult to give of ourselves for the sake of our brothers or for the ministry. Maybe we can think back to it in future circumstances when we are asked to do something that appears intimidating. We must consider our true limitations, of course, but we also cannot let our doubts get on the way of the Spirit of God working in us and through us. Because when He gives abundantly. The Sisters of Life wrote the Litany of Trust, which is very powerful to pray and helpful to recognize in what areas of our life we might be holding back from giving ourselves entirely to God. One petition stood out for me today in the Litany of Trust. From the fear of being asked to give more than I have, deliver me, Jesus.